If you're a Japanese learner, chances are you're struggling with kanji right now. You think it's just you or just learners. Actually, it's not. In Japan, there's a kanji proficiency test made for native speakers called Kanken. Guess the pass rate for level 1? 9%. And that's on a good year. Sometimes it dropped to 5. And yes, that's the native speakers we are talking about. Hope that makes you feel better. Or worse. So why is it so hard, even for native speakers?
The official list of common use kanji, or Jōyō Kanji, contains 2,136 characters. In theory, a Japanese high school graduate should be able to read all of them and can reliably write about half of them. For comparison, an average Chinese high school graduate can recognize anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 characters. But generally, just like the Japanese, they can write only about half from memory.
But is that all of characters? Actually, no. The list is just a guideline, more like a recognition of common practice, not a hard limit.
Beyond those 2,000, there are 863 additional characters used for personal names. That makes it 2,999 in total. Most Japanese people can recognize them just fine, but when it comes to writing them, also about half, give or take.
Think that's the end of it? Not even close. If you want to challenge Kanken Level 1, the exam that was mentioned earlier, the character count doubles to about 6,000.
Technically, you don't need to write every single one, but you must distinguish extremely similar looking ones. Something you can only do if you actually know how to write them reliably.
Fail at that? You won't pass.
Mastering these 6,000 characters, that means you surpass the handwriting level of most well-educated native Chinese speakers. At this level, you could read modern literary masterpieces and even some classical texts effortlessly.
But 6,000 is still far from the full extent of kanji.
The Great Chinese-Japanese Dictionary, or Dai Kanwa Jiten, is like the Oxford English Dictionary of Japanese. It contains nearly 50,000 characters. Most of these you won't ever see in your life. They're basically linguistic fossils. Unless you are an archaeologist, you don't really need to know that they exist.
But even if you are a linguistic archaeologist, this test is still hard enough to make you sweat, because if you think it's just about writing those characters, you're being a bit naive.
Kanken Level 1 also tests pronunciation, and this can multiply the complexity. Why? Because in Japanese, it's rare for a character to have only one reading.
If you find some characters have 6 or 7 different pronunciations, don't be surprised. That's just another Tuesday in Japanese. So how did it end up like this in the first place?
Nobody knows exactly when kanji arrived in Japan, but monks likely brought them from the Korean peninsula between the 4th and the 5th centuries. Back then, kanji was mostly for Buddhist scriptures. There was no systematic pronunciation. People just copied what monks said. There were only fragments of sound at that time. For example, someone will point to this character for mountain and call it yama, the indigenous Japanese word for the concept. This was the origin of kunyomi, or semantic reading. Here, kun refers to meaning-based interpretation, and yomi means reading.
Kunyomi describes reading kanji by mapping their meaning to a native Japanese word, rather than using the original Chinese sound.
By the 5th and 6th centuries, Japan adopted its first systematic borrowing of Chinese sounds. This system is called onyomi, which means reading by sound.
But as you might have guessed, there isn't just one onyomi.
Yes, back then China was in the Northern and Southern Dynasties period. The pronunciations Japan first imported came from the south, a region known as Wu in modern Chinese.
Sorry, I don't have a translation for this old Chinese name, and the same goes for a few other terms coming up. You just have to stick with the original pronunciation.
Thus, these early readings were called gong, the sound of wu. Notice that the character wu is not only written slightly different, but its pronunciation has also changed. It may have sounded similar back then, but today the two are completely different.
Over 100 years later, China entered the golden age of Tang Dynasty. Japan sent many kentoshi, envoys, to China to learn politics, economy, culture, and pretty much everything. This included the prestige accent of the capital.
By this time, the Southern Goon accent, which was early adopted by Japanese, was considered outdated or rustic by Tang elite. Japan actually launched an official movement to switch to the new Tang accent. Back then, Chinese people referred to themselves using the concept of Han. That's why this new accent became known as Kang'un. Because of the same Han concept, the characters are called Hanzi in Chinese, and in Japanese Kanji.
Basically the same word with different pronunciations. For the next 1,000 years after Tang's decline, Japan continued to import vocabulary from Chinese, especially Buddhist terms and everyday words. The Tang influence was enormous. The Japanese continued to refer China as Tang or To in Japanese. These later imports were collectively called Toon, sounds of Tang. So 3 onyomis plus 1 kunyomi only makes 4 readings, right? Not quite. There are often multiple kunyomis for each character.
Take this one for example. 3 onyomis are Gyo as in Gyoji, event, Ko as in Ginko, bank, An as in Andong, a paper lantern, plus 3 kunyomis like I in Iku, Yu in Yukue, and Okona in Okonau. For this character, it can be read as Sho, Se, I, Uma, Ha, Nama, Ai.
And some others are so rare that even a native speaker may never have heard of them. Now you understand why Kanken Level 1 pass rate is so low. It's basically health mode. It even tests idioms that are rarely used in modern Chinese. Compared to this, the JLPT N1 is just child's play. These days, the frequency of kanji use is slowly declining, and people often rely on kana to replace complex characters. Some have even suggested abandoning kanji entirely, as Korea once did. But every time public opposition is overwhelming. I guess after 1.5 millennia, kanji has become such an inseparable part of Japanese identity that it simply cannot be taken away, isn't it?